and there are many, and it's complicated, to say we want to be in partnership with you proactively to do a couple things. Number one, we want to stabilize our own kids. We want to stabilize our own kids. We want to become aware that they may not be stable. Maybe we thought they were. Maybe we never considered that this was a problem they had. No, we want to make you aware that this is possibly a problem. We want to start conversations. We want to help you start conversations to discover this. We want to help you get your kids some help if they need it, or your grandkids some help if they need it. We want to stabilize them. But then we also want to help them become ministers to the kids and the people around them. Because your kid may not have these issues, but if you're anything like my house growing up, I had kids at my house all the time that were friends of my kids. And so to become aware of not only the things that my kids are thinking, but to become aware of what other kids that are coming to my house are thinking, and to help my kids understand. One of the factors that we have in death by suicide is bullying, or just the way kids talk to each other. When your kids are stable and they understand who they are and they understand this is a real problem for others, they become much more willing to stand in the gap for others. So it's not just about helping protect our kids, it's about creating a group of kids that go into the schools and they're an asset to the schools. They're there to work alongside the teachers. You'll hear some of the sources of strength about that Lakeland's put together and all the school districts here are doing. It's a peer program where kids are learning not only for themselves, but they're learning how to help other kids, how to have honest conversations. We want to be a part of helping kids get strong and then helping the kids around them that may not be so strong. Wouldn't it be awesome to kind of unleash a group of kids that we're looking and caring and ministering, and rather than being like normal kids tend to be, which is very self-centered, and it's that's just part of it. We're all there to make people aware that you could be a part of saving people's lives even as a teenager. Teenagers can be the most powerful and effective group of people if they're given a vision for it and they're given tools to understand how to do that, and then unleashing them with our support. We could make a difference in our school district. We could make a difference in our community, in homes. That's what we're looking for. So our goal tonight is to share with you what we're doing, or at least some of what we're doing in January here. We want to connect you with resources. We have partnerships that you're going to hear about, both in the government areas, the school districts, the mental health areas. We want you to know what the resources are. We want to connect you with resources. And then, finally, folks, there's a part of this. We're having this at a church. And when we're at a church, we can talk about some things that we have to be careful about talking about in the public sector. But there are some components to this that have to be talked about if we're going to deal with the holistic problem. There are spiritual aspects. There's a spiritual enemy who whispers in our kids' ears, who speaks to our kids through the culture, through the media. We have a real issue, and so the church should be a part of the solution. God's church should be a part of the solution, because we are uniquely gifted and enabled to deal in the spiritual realm where others have to be careful. We have the ability to have that conversation. And so we'll be talking about some of that tonight. I want to tell you just a little bit about the video you're about to see. This is, some of you heard the story of how this started, but a couple of years ago, year and a half ago, there was another death by suicide. A straight-A student, a popular kid, an athlete. And so I wake up in the morning and I start getting texts and phone calls right away. And I get a phone call from a leader in our community who is just struck, because this young person was the son of one of this leader in our communities. He was his friend's kid. And so now he's going over there and he's saying, what do I say? How do I speak to this father? This kid was such a great kid. Nobody saw it coming. How do we deal with this? What do we do? Something's got to get done. And as he was sharing with me his feelings about this, you could just hear him start to get emotional. And he said something that sparked an idea. He said, back when we were growing up, kids were always drinking. And so they did before prom. They brought in this fake car wreck with ambulances and people came in and they tried to scare the kids into helping them understand a stupid decision to drink can lead to somebody dying in a car accident, a DUI, a changed life. We got to do something. And so I was just contemplating what he had said, and I'm driving down the road, and in my mind came a man in one of my men's groups named Caleb. And Caleb is a leader in what's called Kairos Productions. He's helped create several movies on Netflix, several Christian movies, and so I just called him and I said, Caleb, I've got an idea. What if we did a documentary where we actually did a partnership with the school or with somebody, I don't know what they would allow, but what if we did a partnership where we actually interviewed kids who had attempted death by suicide and asked them why they did it and tried to discover what are the lies and help these kids know that these things they're believing, they are lies. They're not true. And what if we were to read the notes of people who have committed death by suicide? What if we were to find out what these lies were and unpack them? And what if we were to show kids the impact of a death by suicide on the family? Because one of the lies kids believe, my wife actually believed, that people would be better off, that she was just a drag on their life. And she had so many problems and people were sick of hearing it. And so everybody would be better off. She didn't matter enough that it would make that big of a difference. She just believed that. And so what if we started to show these kids that were contemplating this, the real impact of what this would do in the lives of the ones they love, so that we could stop this, we could cut it off, and we could start giving our kids tools. And so he said, that's an amazing idea. We could maybe do that. And he said, let me call you back. And so he made a phone call to his partner, and he called me back in 10 minutes. He said, we're in. We'll do it. I said, well, what does something like that cost? He goes, we'll do it at cost. It's going to be cheap. I go, well, okay, awesome. I said, but don't do anything. I haven't even talked to the powers that be in the school district if we would be able to partner with them. Because we're a church, there's separation of church and state issues. And so I have a relationship through one of our North Campus and Jim Blazin, and some of these guys have been partnering up in Timberlake for several months. I have great friendships. Several of the people who lead in the Lakeland School District come to this church, and they're friends. And so I got in contact with Dr. Becky MEYER. And by the way, she's not here tonight. She leaves, or she gives you her apologies for not being here. She kind of had something important. Her daughter got married. So we said, okay, that's all right. But I called her and got to talk with her, and when I shared with her what I was thinking and that we had a production company that would be willing to do this, she said something. She goes, ooh, I just got tingles. If you know Dr. MEYER, you know that means Dad hit her. And as I got to talk to Dr. MEYER and her lead team, her passion and what they had already got going and what they were doing already, and how this was an issue of the heart for her, she said, yes, we're in, we'll do it. Let's do this partnership. And of course, we had to be careful because we would be creating something for the public schools. She said, we have health classes. We'll create these videos, peer-to-peer videos, where there's a discussion topic, and things are said, and there's discussion questions that come after, and we'll use it as a part of our Sources of Strength program, their Sources of Strength program, which they created. And she's like, we'll do it. And we'll open up the school, and we'll let you interview kids. They have to have permission from their parents, but we'll do this. We're gonna do anything we can to prevent this. And I was blown away. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And so I called back Caleb from the production company and said, hey, they're in. And I go, okay, so now when you said it wasn't going to cost that much, what did that mean? And he said, oh, it's not that much. It's maybe $150,000. And I paused, and he goes, Jim, that's nothing for something like this. And I was like, your idea of nothing and my idea of nothing is not the same thing. I don't know, just pause. And so I was driving, and I was like, man, I was just bummed. Because, okay, now we got this open door, but $150,000. And I'm driving down the road, and I get a phone call from somebody I hadn't heard from for quite a while who said, who'd been a part of my life and the life of our church before, and had stepped in years ago to help us financially. And he called and he said, I don't know why I'm supposed to call you today, but I'm supposed to call you today. What do you got going on? And I shared with him what had just happened, another death by suicide, and how bad it is, and what's going on. And his daughter had attempted suicide, and this was a special pain for him. And he said, I'm going to help you. I said, well, what does that mean? He said, just move forward with the project. It's going to get taken care of. In less than an afternoon, doors had been opened that I did not expect to be opened. And as a result of that, we were able to create a program. I have to tell you, this guy who was going to give a bunch of money had a business. 2020 has not been very good for a lot of people. Would you agree? And about the time when the money was supposed to come in, we got started on the project, he was unable to help us. And now we've already got it started. We've already made commitments. We're in big trouble in my mind. And I get a phone call from another guy who asked me to go to coffee. And he said, I've just had a business deal go through, and I would like you to tell me where you would like this amount of money to go. He knew nothing about it. When you look through this, the partnerships, the things that have happened have been amazing, nothing short of amazing. And I know death by suicide breaks God's heart, just as it breaks ours. And so I'm excited. What you're going to see tonight in the next few minutes is a video that was created for parents. We have several different projects, 5 sessions that are created for the youth, peer-led in Sources of Strength. We have part of them that were created for the youth group. One was created based on a set of parents in our church, their life, and the Farnsworths lost their little girl not that long ago, and they were willing to do a video as parents to talk about how they got through it, and so that will be a piece of this as well. But the part tonight has been especially shaped to start a conversation. Now again, this is being shaped so that there's videos that lead to discussion groups. We won't be doing a large discussion group tonight, but you'll see tonight some of the content which is designed to spark conversations, honest conversations, because what you will find is a key answer to this is real relationships where people are honestly able to be vulnerable with one another in safe relationships is a key to stopping this. And so everything we do is designed to create relationship and conversation. Tonight you'll just see this video. Let's watch this right now.
It has become pretty much an epidemic across the entire country. We had several suicides in our district, death by suicide. Not only we had parents in our district, we had students in our district. How do we help people to talk about this? Make sure that it's a topic that people feel like they're ready to talk to students about, and let every single person know that they're irreplaceable, and if they are gone, they're gonna be missed.
Everybody has problems. I'm sitting here right now and I have problems. And problems bring a lot of big feelings in all of us. And we don't always know how to deal with those feelings, but that can be all helped with people who really care. You see the most amazing change with kids happen because of relationships. And that can happen with anybody if there can be a connection.
I think there's still very much a stigma attached to it. So now I think that it's healthy to talk about things. I think it's healthy to talk about how you're feeling and know that that's how it should be.
My depression started in 6th grade, and it was mainly caused by not having friends and getting transitioned into a new school.
You just feel like a shell, like you're not yourself and you don't want to be here anymore. You're just like, I want out, but I don't want to wake up tomorrow and have to deal with it anymore.
When you're in that state of mind, it drags you down, and that's all you see.
I've lost some people to suicide, and I've lost people in general, and I realized that it has an impact on somebody. Like, even if you're not, if you don't talk to them a lot, it impacts them.
For the people that are currently going through it, I just hope that they get through it. I know they can get through it, and they do mean something to somebody. And don't be afraid to, even if it's like a parent, teacher, a trusted adult, don't be afraid to turn to them. They're here to help.
You have to tell somebody because you need support. You can't do it on your own.
My experience with anxiety was after my brother killed himself. He was 13.
My brother was adopted 13 months before I was born. Growing up with him was always a journey. He was wild. He loved to be in the woods. He was very, very smart. Smarter than I probably ever will be. Those are memories that I wish I could still make today. He was friendly to everyone, even if they were mean to him. He didn't care. Back in Montana, where we're from, he had a best friend named Sam. They did everything together. They were the same people in different bodies. And he ended up committing suicide 13 days after my brother did.
In the first few weeks, I was just in shock. I was in denial. But everyone around me, I could just see was it was just rippling and then rippling and rippling because it doesn't stop. If someone dies or kills themselves, a lot of people don't realize how many people it's actually going to affect. Once it affects one person, it affects another, and then it just becomes a cancer around everyone because they become sad, and then they feel depressed, and then they feel anxiety. So just one person feeling sad and depressed will carry on to another person. I know personally how it affected me and affected my parents' life and my little sister's life. We lived for 4 years now after it, just feeling bad about ourselves, feeling that it's our fault.
I didn't think that he would be someone that would do that type of thing. He didn't tell me anything about it or didn't tell me how he was sad. He was always someone that was always helping others. He was never helping himself.
He would compress himself to his family. He used to tell us how he felt and how his day went, and then when we'd go talk at dinner, he'd just sit in the corner, and that's one of the main signs that we started him going to counseling with a family counselor. And then after my parents got divorced, I think that's kind of what pushed him over the edge. Climbing my way up that was the hard part. It took a solid 3 years till about last year, my sophomore year. Finding healthy alternatives to my depression, how to deal with it, talking to counselors, playing sports, having friends to go talk to, and that helped a lot. Find someone that you can talk to, someone that you trust. It's the main solution that will help you. You can take all these antidepressants and all these pills, and I guarantee that it's not going to help as much as talking to someone about it and finding someone that really understands what you're going through.
Parents are afraid to ask their kids those tough questions, and that's the exact opposite of what you should do. If your kid comes to you and says they're sad, you need to question them about that. Give them a chance to discuss it without judgment. I think that parents need to not be afraid to get help outside of their home. I think a lot of parents think that if I can't help my kid on my own, then I'm a failure as a parent, and that's not true. So getting them in contact with other resources, whether it's their school counselor, whether it's counseling outside of school, they can have so much more of an impact on their kids than they give themselves credit for.
As a parent, you have to be vulnerable and be able to say, yes, I struggle with that, or yes, I know other people struggle with that also, and not act like you have all the answers. As a parent, you have to say, I want to be here and we're going to work through some of this together.
Be involved with your kid. Know who their friends are. Know who their teachers are. Know what they're doing at school. Know where they are after school. Just be there and be a part of their life and ask them what's going on. They may not always tell you everything, but just so they know that you are behind them, like 100%, like you're gonna support them through the good times and the bad.
What we're teaching these kids right now is how to advocate for themselves, that they're important, that their mental health is important, that they matter. The more that we can address that and offer up the options to them, here's some resources, here's ways that we can learn coping skills, ways that we can, live a happier life. Why wouldn't we want that for our kids? I mean, we want them to be happy, we want them to feel valued and to live a long life and be able to look back on this someday and help somebody else with that information.
One of the highest suicide rates in the country are 45 to 54-year-old men who are not necessarily poor, they're middle class. The effects of the lies, the effects of the things that people believe, lies like, I'm not important, lies like, people would be better off if I wasn't around because I'm a problem. So how do we wake people up? How do we stop this?
My husband was Troy Schuler, and he was the Coeur d'Alene High School principal. He passed away March 21st, 2018. He had committed suicide. Troy always would call me on his way home from work, and he had called me, and I remember I said, hey, you're calling a lot later than you normally do. And he said, well, I had a meeting at the district office. And I said, did it go okay? And I remember there was this long pause, and he goes, yeah, it was fine. And I'm like, are you sure? I really realized, looking back now, I'm pretty sure he was up that entire night planning his last day. That morning, when he went to leave, I remember him holding me really tight, and I remember him pulling back, and I remember him really looking me in the eye and saying, I love you. And then he walked out the door, and that was the last time I ever saw him alive. And my first clue as to what had happened was in the note, there was 2 sentences that said, ever since January of 2001, I haven't felt right. He said, my body aches continuously, but my headache never goes away. Slowly but surely, after Troy died, I started to have people coming to me with stories. Like, it all started with this whole meeting at the district office, him being accused of breaking the drug policy. There were all these stories of staff members and students who had had surgeries and Troy had gone to see them. And every time after Troy had left, prescription medication had disappeared. Troy had had a lot of chronic pain throughout his life. He was basically self-medicating. And so the way he saw it, he was going to lose everything.
The hardest part for me was just understanding why he didn't want, I mean, obviously there's other reasons, but why he didn't want to see me every day anymore. Parents who are struggling need to realize that their kids really do love them. And if they leave, I mean, they're really leaving behind a kid who will be lost now. I felt a part of my identity was with my dad, and he was really a big part of helping me become, I guess, a man, if that makes sense. And when he left, it almost felt like he was almost giving up on me.
I really thought that Troy and I had a really great marriage. I always thought or believed that he knew he could come to me with anything. We always talk about, you know, why aren't people reaching out? Why aren't people getting help? You actually have to be really strong to talk about these things, and you have to be strong to ask for help. I understand why they're afraid and why it's hard to talk about these things, but just have to give people the opportunity to help you because they will and they want to.
This has to stop. I mean, these kids and parents and anybody needs to realize the magnitude of what a life means.
Suicide is a community issue. It's not a school-based problem. Now, we may be on the front lines, and we have students for a vast majority of their day. And so we're going to see some of these behaviors that they may not necessarily exhibit, even sometimes at home.
The world we live in right now is demanding. We have families where both parents are working more than one job just trying to keep food on the table and a roof over people's heads. And the one thing nobody has enough of is time. But it's so critical to be present and really hear what your kids want to talk about.
We're not perfect. Parenting is, it's an art form. We're all figuring it out as we go. And I think awareness is the first piece of really being intentional about parenting, making sure that we're putting in that time, that we're checking in with our kids, that when kids are saying, I'm fine, and that's their response, there's more to it.
You have to sometimes force your kids to go on the family trip when they say they don't want to. Sometimes have to kind of force your kids, hey, we're gonna go out and do a little hike together. We're gonna get some active energy going, bring up the endorphins. We're gonna have 3 nights that we're gonna put away our cell phones, no cell phones, and we're gonna have conversation at the dinner table. We need to, as adults, be able to say, you are irreplaceable. Somebody in this world right now wants to help you.
And there are more resources out there that are going to help you with open arms. There's no stigma attached. Mental health, physical health, same thing. If you think your child is depressed, take them in for some screening and some help.
No matter what is in the world, you have the power inside of you to be able to deal with it. We want you to be able to tell the people that are around you that you know are safe and that love you.
You start to get to know people for real and you see the differences in them and you're stopping and you're being honest, and that's just a part of the rhythm of life. We're called on to be in relationship with each other, a support system to one another, what God designed it to be.
Nothing matters more than us saving every single human life in our district, in our community. This is our most important mission moving forward.
Right now, I'm going to introduce you to our panel. So, panel, why don't you make your way up here? As I stated before, we have some leaders here from the Lakeland School District, and I'll introduce them to you in a minute. We have some mental health professionals here that are going to be dealing with some of those components, and those are factors in all of this. We have some parents, the Farnsworths, Jamie and Jason, and then we have Heath, who is our youth minister here, one of our youth ministers here. And we're gonna have a discussion. We've talked about some questions, and I want to start today with the Lakeland School District. And up here we have Stacy Lawler, who has helped to create the Sources of Strength. She was actually the state teacher of the year this year, and she has poured her life into these kids. This is Chris McDougall. He is the principal at Timberlake Middle School, and we are blessed in our area with some of the principals that we have. Just amazing, Chris. I'm just super thankful for you. I also want to let you know that we have some others here as well. The assistant superintendent, Lisa Sexton, is here, and she was in the video along with Dr. Meyer. Thank you for being here. Lynn Pasley is one of our principals here as well, and so the Lakeland School District is well represented here. I want to just ask you, I know you folks have been on the front lines of this. You're working with this all the time. Explain to us the Sources of Strength, where that came from, and how is it designed to work and help us in this area? Yeah.
Mine.
I think so.
Lou?
There you are.
Yep, I am. Okay. First of all, kudos to that film. Wow. I had watched it on my phone at home, kind of crying through the whole thing, and then to be able to see it like that, I just think it's amazing what you guys have done, so thank you. Sources of Strength is nationally a program all over the nation that really just helps kids and gives them resources. I think the thing that is for me, I think the thing that stands out the most is that it's something tangible for kids to hold on to. You guys can see our wheel in front of us right here. It's divided up into 8 pieces. And what we teach with the Sources of Strength is really about the wheels. And the concept behind it is that when a kid is in crisis, that you've got these pieces of the wheel to try to catch you. And if you only have one piece of the wheel or 2, you're not going to be able to get caught when you're in crisis and when you're falling. And the more pieces of that wheel that you have, the more likely you're going to be able to be caught. So using the wheel is a great visual. It gives kids something that they can actually hold on to. This is not only just for kids. I used it with my 20-year-old daughter when she was struggling with some depression and some anxiety. I use it for myself. When I've had a bad day, I pull on my Sources of Strength, and I usually work on generosity because that's something I have control over. So for us, I think the big thing is we give something to kids that they can see. They can see the wheel, and they know that they can pull on those sources when they're struggling. And again, I know that you said this, Jim, is that it's a peer-led program, and it truly is. We are, as adults, we are on the sidelines, and we are helping facilitate. And I'm also the health teacher at the junior high, so I'm constantly talking about Sources of Strength. Kids get tired of me saying, what's your sources, what's your sources? But I really do teach to this in class. made a ton of videos because of my award last year. Most of my videos that I did for the state of Idaho had to do with sources of strength. That's how much I believe in the program. So, I don't know, Mr. McDougall, do you have anything else to say?
Well, it has been amazing having this program, and I want to also, I know that there's another human out in the audience, the CORE project, the Greg Summers. We tie these two together and use them together as these relationship building pieces in our building that have, you watch the kids and you watch our awesome teachers and the people who actually are in the trenches facilitating, and that is the key. It's just facilitation. The kids are really taking this and running with it, but when you tie in the CORE project and sources of strength, and we are building these relationships with these kids, and they have a trusted adult or adults in our building that they know they can go to, and it was well shown in the video where the one girl said, make sure you have a trusted adult or somebody you can go to. That's what's happening, I know, in our building, and I know in our district, that's what we're doing. So it's been a great program.
When you, let's say that we have a parent who is concerned about their kid, and maybe they've discovered something, a journal or something, so the kid's lashed out, said something, you're concerned. What is the best way for parents to partner with the school? What's the right person to call? In what way would a partnership work between a parent and the school in these kinds of situations?
Well, again, we have in fact, she was on the video, NIEMAN is our counselor. Every school has a counselor, and that is probably the #1 go-to, because they know how, and we go through QPR training too, which I forget the acronym, question, persuade, and refer, there it is. But we also have that, and so these parents, and that's available for parents as well, but #1 is to call, reach out to our counselor, then she can guide, or he, depending on what school you're calling, but they can guide and give you those places and contact numbers, and also just how to question, how to talk to your son or daughter.
So is the sources of strength, it's in you've implemented it in your health classes. Is every kid involved in that because they have to take a health class, and so they're already in these programs?
So the thing that's kind of unique about Sources of Strength is that it's a school-wide program. So I think we have 25 kids that are our core peer leaders, and then it's really just through our peer leaders that are going to go out and they're going to spread the good word to kids, and they're going to be out there in the schools. But as far as like teaching about the wheel, yeah, every single student at Timberlake Junior High knows about the Sources of Strength wheel. So we kind of implement it both ways. Not only are we talking about it, I do talk about mental health in my health class as well, but we talk about Sources of Strength throughout our school. We'll run campaigns. The campaign we're doing right now is What Helps Me, deal with the 3 big emotions. So that's kind of the new thing that we're talking about with our students. And so we're going to be going, we have a couple of our awesome Sources of Strength ladies at our school that will actually be going into the classrooms and talking specifically to kids about what helps me, and they will be able to identify at least 3 of the things on the wheel that help them when they're feeling angry, or when they're feeling sad, or when they're feeling anxious, which in the middle of all the stuff that we're going on right now, I think that's pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah. If you were to say anything to parents after, you guys are on the front lines, you're seeing hundreds of kids. What would you say would be the most important thing you wish they would knew from your perspective?
I'll start. I was a parent of a kid who called me and said he was suicidal. So this for me is emotional. My son was a freshman in college and called me, and I recognize that I'm one of the lucky ones because he made that phone call and he told me he was suicidal. So I think my message has been through my story with Keegan, and then into my classroom and into the state of Idaho, is just you have to be willing to have that really hard conversation. I cannot tell you how many times I've had to look at a student or my own children and say, are you thinking of killing yourself? And that sounds like it's an awful thing to have to say, but you have to be brave enough to do it. You have to be brave enough to say that, because saying, are you thinking about, hurting yourself, or you wouldn't do stuff like that. And again, Chris referred to QPR, which, by the way, in the state of Idaho, we've got really great coupons that you can take that class for free. Just a little plug, come find me and I'll tell you how to do that. But it really gives you the tools to be able to have those conversations. That's not something we want to talk about. You don't want to ask your kid if they are going to kill themselves. That's terrible. But you have to be brave enough to do that. So my thing with parents is get some training on knowing how to talk to your kid and be brave enough to do it.
And it was said very well by our counselor. Again, I'm giving her a shout out, but be involved. Know exactly what your kids are doing, and dig deep. Make sure you're digging deep. Don't just let the superficial and the surface conversation happen. Talk. Like, sit down, talk, and know what they like, they don't like, who they don't like. And then also as parents, just make sure you're talking to each other too. Get involved as a parent or in a parent group. And reach out to us. We're, as far as the district and schools, we're happy to help.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I really enjoyed about becoming familiar with what you guys are doing is it's about honest conversation. It's about, as Christians, Scripture says that all of the Scriptures hang on two commands, loving God and loving others. It's all, you were designed for relationship, and there are so many things that work against relationship. You guys are having to deal with people who have closer relationships with their phones than they do with anybody else. And so these kids are starving for someone that they could trust or to feel like they're cared about. And, I've watched you let so many people rub your bald head. So many of those kids. And I appreciate you and that you guys you care about those kids. It isn't just your job. Or you wouldn't be coming here on a Sunday night. Thank you for what you're doing. And I would just say this, folks, you have partners, you have people that do care in your schools, in many of these schools. And I want to encourage you to utilize those things. I think one of the things that happens with parents, as a father who had a drug-addicted son who dealt with mental illness, you're embarrassed. You're like, you have to work through it. Are they going to think I was a bad parent? Are they going to think, and the shame factor and the keeping things quiet factor, and the mental illness, one of the things that I hope we're able to do through this, is in our church in particular, I want to stomp out the stigma of mental illness. I want to kill that. Because I'm just telling you, the shame it causes, and the people go underground and they isolate because they don't want to share their struggles, or they don't want to share somebody they love is struggling, and and the isolation it creates. I just am praying that we're going to be able to deal with that. That leads me to you guys. Tim Stoddard, a psychiatrist. Mike Wraith works with a emergency sort of support group. I'm trying to remember the actual name. It doesn't matter.
It's a complicated name. I'll tell you.
Yeah, it's a complicated an acronym in which I can never remember. But you guys are dealing with the mental health issues, and that plays a huge part. There's the relational issues and the lack of relationship. There's the spiritual issues, but the mental health issues, what kinds of factors do you think play a part in this with these kids that are dealing with that? Tim, why don't you share a little bit about what you're seeing right now when it comes to the issue of mental illness?
Well, I think that we're obviously all aware these are trying times for everyone, and even before 2020. Things, it has been extremely difficult, but I think that what we're finding now is people are feeling even stretched beyond what they're capable of managing. We find that resources out there are much less than we wish they were. And so I think, in the video there, they alluded to just what a tough step sometimes it is to take and say, I need help. And to say, this is more than I can deal with on my own. And to make that call or to reach out or ask, that's incredibly difficult a lot of times. And then sometimes there's the challenge of, even when you're able to do that, finding the help that's available. And sometimes that's a little bit of a journey also.
Tim, let me ask you this. When you're thinking about your kids, what are some of the signs that you think we should be looking for as parents, or as a friend, a relative? What are some of the signs that you look for that say, you know what, there may be a medical condition tied to this?
And I think actually it's also pretty impressive, the little card that was given out. I thought that does a good little job of summarizing some of the warning signs that are there. And we all go through life and have disappointments and things that are frustrations, things that happen or don't happen that we want to, and we have reaction to that. But also when it really starts to be a concern in mental health, when you see that duration, when you see that 2 weeks or longer of symptoms with the sleep disturbance, the appetite change, the mood change, the energy going down, and maybe some of the expressing hopelessness or loneliness or despair. So those things that are being said that are such key markers. But so I think we're looking at more than just a bad day or a down week. This is a more profound change than that.
So I know, Mike, by the way, it's the mobile response team. Sorry about that.
You're good.
I know you work and you've created that. First of all, tell us what that is a little bit.
Sure. So I work for the Department of Health and Welfare, the Division of Behavioral Health, and one of the things that our department's been doing statewide is moving more towards crisis response and doing more crisis preventative work. So I am very excited that our church is taking a lead in this area. This last year, about a year ago, we started moving towards that direction. And basically, the idea is to make a crisis response team that's crisis for all. So we're not limited to age, we're not limited to just mental illness. It's anyone who's in crisis. And so our mobile response started, our mobile response team started this last July 6th. And we're running 7 days a week. We're actually mobile from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. But even if you call after 8 p.m., you still will get our workers. They're 24/7 as far as on the phone. And the idea is that we can help triage. We can help figure out for you what spectrum of response we can provide as far as crisis. So it might just be something over the phone where we talk with you about how you're struggling or how your child's struggling. And it might be a simple fix over the phone. We might safety plan with you. We might come up with options so that you feel supported and that you can get the help that you need. We also provide resources and ways to get connected. But if it actually is a crisis where you feel in that moment your child or your family member is actually in danger and you're not really sure what to do, we actually can respond mobily and be in person to help figure out the situation and help get you guys connected to where you need to go. Sometimes that's getting police involved, and sometimes for some that's a scary thing. But it's really important to understand that, I'm really proud of our officers out here. We work side by side with them in our whole county and even outside of our county here. And this is a number one thing on their mind as well. And so I train with them, and it's such a privilege to see how proactive they want to be. And so we can help decide in that situation where we need to get law enforcement support if you have a child or a family member who needs that response. If you actually, so we know what it is. There is a slide with the business card. I don't know if you guys have that. If you can throw that up there. So that's it right there. If you want to take a picture, but also I've got a bunch of those out there in the foyer as well. So
let me ask a question. Kids, we know, can be emotional. They can have bad days. They can say things they don't mean. When do we know? What would you tell us about when it's like, okay, I need to make a call? And just give me a basic couple of questions that you would ask to determine whether or not I got to do something in an emergency response sort of situation.
Well, hopefully, often we know our kids, we know, is this a normal behavior for them? I appreciated what Tim mentioned about, are there patterns or things that are changing? The obvious thing is if your child, if you're asking those tough questions, are you suicidal? Are you having thoughts of killing yourself? Do you have a plan to kill yourself? What is that plan? Those are important things that you need to ask. If the answer to those things are yes, that's a good opportunity to call us. One thing to understand, and you guys need to know, you should not be doing this alone, okay? I love how our church emphasizes relationship. Well, that's true in everything that we do, in treatment, in response. And so when you're reaching out, we're here to assist you. If you're hearing that you have a family member who feels like they're in danger, you don't feel comfortable leaving them alone, that's a good opportunity to go, you know what, I need to call for help. And this is one of the resources you can call.
No, I think that bears repeating too, and I think that we've all heard this, but sometimes it still maybe doesn't, just needs to be heard again, that it is okay to ask directly, and that is something that you want to do. And when you begin that direct and honest conversation, as Mark was saying, one of those questions also is, are you having specific thoughts? And actually thinking about a way of doing that, and then even getting to that, are you actually making a plan about how to act on that? And so when those are yeses, that's worth really taking seriously, and you've got a crisis on your hand, and that's how it should be treated.
Yeah, one other thing I'll just say, and we're talking about mental health in general. We all need to have good mental health. When we talk about mental health, a lot of times our minds go to, well, okay, that's the person with schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, which are real things, and those are real diagnoses that need to be treated just like any other medical issue. But we all need good mental health, and if we're seeing that our kids are just not functioning in their day, that they're not doing the things they normally would do, those are real red flags. We all respond to stress differently, and so it's important to connect with your kid. That's the theme you're going to hear the most tonight, is keep connected with your kid, and make sure you're having conversations with them, and you're not just always trying to problem solve with them, but that you're actually connecting with them emotionally. You're going through the emotional issues that they're experiencing every day, that you actually create a time where you can talk about those things. And so having that safe environment is key. So,
as you were hearing any of that, you work with kids all the time. Anything you would add to? So be listening. I want you to be able to add things to this as we move forward. Anything you would add after talking with kids as much as you do and with counselors? Nailed it? Okay.
I know, I'm just like the whole time I'm like, yep.
I was saying the same
what he
thing.
said.
Yep.
So, no, not really.
Okay. I get to introduce to you Jason and Jamie Farmsworth, and I love you and I'm proud of you, and as parents who have been through this, what do you wish, or what would you like to say, I guess, to parents who have kids that are struggling?
There's a lot to say. But first, I want to just thank everybody for being here and beginning the discussion of a very hard subject. It means that you care, and that you not only care about your own families, but you care about what's happening in our community, and that is so important, because just as it's hard for us to sit up here and talk about our story and the fact that our daughter chose to end her life, it's equally difficult for us to see our communities continue to hurt. And so we need to bridge these gaps and come together and continue to discuss these difficult things. Also, I just want to say that I am left speechless in so many ways about what has transpired in the last 4 years in this community since Haley has passed away. We felt really alone. We didn't hear much about suicide in our community, let alone any resources to help people get through that, in all honesty. I remember reaching out to SPAN, and they were just beginning, that's the Suicide Prevention Action Network at the Panhandle Health District, and they were just beginning committee meetings again, and I reached out to them and asked them if we could be involved, and they said, absolutely, come. And this was only months after Haley had passed. The reason that I say that I'm just speechless about what has happened in our community as far as growth is because you guys have 100% more resources available. And it's important that you take that seriously and utilize the resources that are up here to help yourselves and your children and your loved ones in the community. Jason and I represent the reality of a loved one being lost by suicide and the lies that the enemy tells us, that we're not good enough, that we'll be better off without them here. And we certainly didn't expect that Haley would pass away that day. There's nothing that prepares you for it. We walk the full gauntlet of emotions. We've experienced guilt and shame. One of the questions asked of us this evening was, what would you have done different? And we sat there and we cried, and we were like, that's a question I don't want to answer, because for 4 years we sat here and thought about everything that we would have done different. And it's hard to talk about those things and go down a really dark space that the enemy could take you about what you could have and should have done. But I heard you say, Jim, that a lot of times we live in a society that is reactive instead of proactive. And I have to tell you that in our experience, since Haley has passed, and our ability to come forward and talk publicly, to do anything within the schools or anything like this, there's a lot of times where people reach out to us in a reactive moment, and it's heartbreaking because we're reactive right now. We're reactive in helping you try to be proactive, and that's difficult for us to walk through. I wanted to share with you about some of Haley's story in order to give you insight on our family and what we experienced, but I struggle because how do I tell you about my child's lifetime that ended too soon? And we could say that Haley grew up in a normal family. We had the same growth experiences. She had a brother, Cameron, not much older than her, and she loved and fought with. We had struggles and heartache and laughter, silliness, good and not so good times. She was baptized here at Real Life at age 11 and attended youth group often, and everything by the societal description of normal life seemed present and relevant in our life. So what happened. Around the age of 13 and 14, things started to become relevant and different. And I know that we didn't know what was changing and how drastic and how fast things were going to change for Haley. You have puberty happening. Their teenagers are trying to figure out who they are and what they want to do. They're trying to figure out, their stance in the world and what they believe and don't believe. And there's a lot of layers, and we all know that as we're raising teenagers. There were certainly things that happened to Haley at school and home that likely impacted or shaped her perceived reality of things. When we talk about social interactions at school and how they handle and deal with those things, we can look at what they're dealing with right now on social media, the access to the means of the internet. There were times in our grief process that we literally have said to each other that if the internet and social media did not exist, our daughter would be alive. We felt that. We felt that deeply. At the time that she was struggling, we disabled our internet. We said, no social media, that's it. None of us are participating. We're going to be interactive as a family, and we're gonna get through these things. And after she passed away, we found 6 cell phones that were not attached to our accounts in any way. The social media was designed to be addictive. You may eliminate access, but there's an addictive factor to it that they can find it. And they'll find and connect to the Wi-Fi to get it. Through our process of trying to navigate helping Haley heal and grow, our lives were completely altered when her decision to complete suicide in our home came to fruition that day, September 30th, 2016. While everybody around us was getting up and ready for their day, kids, her friends, getting ready for school, she wasn't here anymore. Her body's still alive, but she's not here. She died. When I got there, her body was still responsive, but she wasn't there. And our whole world came crashing down around us. We've hurt in the most unimaginable ways. And we all have similarities here in this subject matter because our family was not an anomaly. I'm certain that most everyone, if not everyone, has been impacted by a suicide loss, whether directly or by someone that they know and who knew somebody. So in the video when we were talking about the ripple effects, we still experience it. And we're here tonight just to, in a hope to help you and others walk through the subject, because we were never meant to walk it alone. And there's so many times that we felt like we were alone, and we certainly do not feel like that now. I'm so thankful for Real Life Ministries and Lakeland School District. I'm thankful for the Panhandle Health District getting involved. If there was any advice that I could give all of you out there, is to help bridge the gaps by getting involved. There are not only just resources and help, but there's committees. You can be a part of the change. This is a fight for life, and a life that we don't get to see grow up anymore. And we don't want that for you.
I appreciate you sharing. And, we've talked about how you still have days. You don't just get past it like it didn't happen. And you still got to get up and you got to keep going, and you do. And rather than allowing this to destroy you, it kind of ticks you off, I think, and I'm thankful for that. I'm glad that you've chosen to build relationships and to work through your own grief in this, and continue to do so.
Yeah, we certainly, you have a choice, right? You can run from it or you can face it. And from day one, Jason and I determined that we were going to turn our pain into action and work with our community in any way that we could. And we were just a family who suffered a tragedy, and we needed the help of our community to bring it where we're at today. I'm awestruck. I'm awestruck to see everybody out here right now. Thank you.
We will be having some support groups in which the farms workers are involved in, just to help walk people through those feelings, that you're not alone when you feel those feelings. And so our church will be doing some relational small groups that are geared around bringing some healing to all of this. Heath Fagan is our middle school pastor here, and he works with several others of our team. And Heath, as you've been listening to this, any thoughts to what you've heard so far based on your experience?
Yeah, actually, something Mike had said about relationship, and I think so often, although suicide is a very multifaceted challenge, I think one of the things that it comes back to is relationships, and having as many relationships with healthy adults and peer groups as possible. And I think one of the things I often kind of relate this to is kind of like tying down or strapping down a load heading down the freeway. You can probably do it with one strap, and it would probably, hopefully, load would get to your destination just fine. But would 3 or 4 straps make everybody feel better? Absolutely. And with the conversation of mental health, with the conversation of young people, students, middle schoolers, high schoolers, we want as many of those healthy people, healthy students, healthy individuals in their lives as possible. That we don't want to be sending students down the freeway with one strap, with one relationship that is healthy, who can speak truth into their life. We want to be sending students down with a ton of relationships. And one of the things I just absolutely love about our community, which is not a reality in most other places in the country, is the relationship between the churches and the schools. I get to see that play out. It's awesome that me and McDougall have a great relationship before we stepped on stage. That's gone back years, and we've worked together in a variety of different situations. Same thing over at the Post Falls High School and the middle schools and in other schools throughout the area. And I think one of the things that the church that we can help and we can provide are some of those relationships. We can help provide groups for students to sit down and have open, honest, transparent conversations. I have a daughter who's almost 10, and one of the things me and my wife have been super intentional about is placing people into her life, even at this age, that we trust, that we can know that she can have a conversation with, and that that conversation, those people can speak truth back to her. And so one of the individuals is our babysitter, Abigail. We pretty consistently have her come over and watch. And one of the things that we love about that relationship is that our daughter, who's about 10, gets to have long conversations with this girl who is just an amazing individual who speaks truth back into her. And so what and I guess one of the things I'd just encourage parents is look for those individuals in your students' lives and help encourage healthy relationships with healthy people. I think as a church, we can definitely help provide those relationships alongside the school, alongside other organizations, but we can provide people for students to have those conversations And then we can partner with the parents. And I think one of the things that I always tell our leaders, our staff, the different folks working with the students here is that we are not the parent. We can be the best youth ministry in the country if we run support for the parents. If we can come alongside parents in those challenging moments and say, hey, we're praying for you, we're here for you, what can we do in the situation? And that as situations come forward, because they often do, through leaders who then bring them to the staff members, and we go and connect with parents and say, hey, here's a conversation that we had with your student. How can we help process? Here's some resources. Here's maybe a next step that you can take. So,
I know you talk to just tons of kids, and you have a whole team of adults that works with kids in small groups. What would be your number one concern as you think about these conversations you're having? What is your number one concern, and what's the solution? Did you already say it? I mean, is that pretty much it?
So I'd say my number one concern would be students being isolated with people who are not in a healthy spot, giving input on what the next step is. I think one of the practical big concerns that I have is in social media and in parents, and this is going to sound harsh to parents, this is not harsh to parents, but parents over-trusting students with social media, which I totally want parents to trust students. I think parents trusting students and trusting the world are two different things. So we trust students, but we don't trust the world who are inputting through social media to students. And so one of the things, I'm for social media. I'm on it. I'm halfway addicted. I'm for social media. So I'm not anti-social media. I'm anti-students really under the age of 16 or 17 on social media without a parent on the account with them. And here's why, is that in every relationship that we allow our students to have, there is some level of us being a part of helping that relationship move in a positive direction. So we have relationships with, like if you have your student come to our youth group, I would love for you to have a relationship with their small group leader. You have a relationship with your students' teachers, your students' friends, parents, your students' friends in person. The area of relationship that we as parents would have very little control over is that social media, the DMs, the direct messages, those areas where things can happen without us even knowing as parents. And those are the things that so often push students into a really unhealthy spot and are the lies that they start to believe. Because I've seen students who would not act a certain way, but through direct message, completely different, because they're able to, kind of message something they might not say in person. But then there's also just a lot of anonymity, secretness behind social media. You can make a fake account. You can create these accounts. It happens regularly where there's accounts made just to pick on different students. A few weeks ago, a youth group, there's a message group. This student was added, that the entire message group was about how terrible this student was, and the message group name was the student, the student's name, kill them. That was the entire message group, and then somebody added this particular student to the message group. Those are the types of things, if we're on social media with our students, on the same accounts, we can help wade through those conversations and have those conversations with them.
Folks, our desire is to begin, as I said, we want to make you aware of what's happening, aware of what we're trying to do, aware of the resources, aware that for some of us, there are things happening in our culture that we're completely unaware of. We're out of the mainstream of the culture, and so we wouldn't even think to actually have a conversation about certain things because we're not even aware that they exist. And then we find out that they exist, and now we become aware. Well, bottom line, death by suicide is more prevalent, more thought about, more considered than at any time I've been aware of. You need to know whether that was a thought you ever had growing up or not. We don't live in the same world. We live in a different world now. And those thoughts are being fed through a variety of different ways. Let me give you, as I bring this kind of to a close tonight, let me suggest something to you. First, when it comes to the social media, it's like a hammer is a good tool, but you can kill somebody with it. That's social media. But I want you to take some time to be proactive, to discover what's going on. There's a video on Netflix called The Social Dilemma. How many of you have seen The Social Dilemma? Okay. The rest of you need to see it because you need to understand the impact of social media. Folks, you need to understand that your kids were designed for relationship, for real relationship. And there are all kinds of things that get in the way of that real relationship. One of the profound studies done that really influenced the way I was a youth minister and the way I do ministry was in a medical report given by Dartmouth Medical School and YMCA in 2003 called Hardwired to Connect. And the premise of it was that there is increasing mental illness in children at younger and younger ages, so much so that they created a study to discover why. And here's what they found. They found that we were hardwired. Of course, these were not Christians. These were atheists. So they would say evolution designed us through accidental random processes, as crazy as that sounds. We were designed with a need for deep relationship with others and spiritual meaning. You were designed that way. That was the premise of the study. And what they found is that kids were no longer having deep spiritual roots, deep spiritual connectedness to a spiritual being. They went to church every once in a while, perhaps, or they didn't go at all. What's right for you is right for you. What's right for you is right for you. It's all different. You get to choose and decide. There was no real stable spiritual meaning. And they found that relationships, because of divorce, because of people moving around the country, because of the busyness, the surface relationships, there weren't deep, intimate relationships. When you think about sources of strength, and you think about what they've done here, what they've done is they've talked about key concepts of generosity, of spiritual meaning, all things that there was a time in our culture where those were a part of the everyday life of people. But those aren't anymore, so they have to create a social, or they have to create a circle, a sphere with words that used to be built into our culture, into our livelihoods. But they're not there anymore. So they have to have classes in a health class to help people figure out what sources of strength. See, as Christians, we've got to pull back from where this culture is taking us and take a deep breath and look at the craziness and look at how we're leading our life in such a way that we're so busy chasing all of these things and even chasing our kids, letting them lead. That's what they want to do. Well, no, kids are not born to want the right things. Would you agree? Our job is to lead. Our job is to say, no, I'm going to parent you, so I'm your best friend when you're 8 years old, but I'm your parent. Someday we're going to be great friends, but I'm your parent, and my job is to lead you by living a life myself that creates deep, intimate relationships. And I'm going to lead my child into deep, intimate relationships because they're going to see it as I model it, as I live it. I'm going to have a community. I'm going to build relational ropes that hold me fast. And as a result, they are plugged in to deep, intimate relationships, to a community of people that actually know each other and care about each other. And the talking, setting aside distractions, is valuable enough to us that we actually live that way as parents. It starts with us. It starts with us. And we create a culture based on our values, not our perceived, not our values that we would say, but our values that we live. Our goal is to live a lifestyle that says, I know you and you know me. I know your problems and you know mine. And I love you anyway and you love me anyway. And I can have a bad day. I can share and you'll stop. You'll stop and I don't even have to say anything. You'll come looking for me. Hey, how are you today? We've got to pull back from where we've gone because it's killing us. And it's killing our families and our kids. Now, ultimately, there's one other thing that's really important. Around here, we say it this way. There's God's part, there's my part, there's their part. I can't do God's part. I can't do their part. I can only do my part. Here's the truth, and I learned this in my own parenting. I can do the very best I can. I never got up one time in a day and said, I want to jack this whole thing up and mess up my family, but I certainly made mistakes. Every parent does. The other day I was with my son and I was talking about, he's got 2 kids now, and I'm like, yeah. I asked him how he was going to do something. He said, well, I'm going to do it this way. And I go, no, you don't want to do that. He goes, well, that's what you did. And I go, I know. That's why I know it doesn't work. Don't do the things. Ask me if I would still do it that way. Because I was wrong. I thought I was right, but I was wrong. To have the kind of relationships where you can talk about these things. Folks, I know this, that I did the very best I could, but my son, one of my sons, and thank God he is a youth pastor now, but I did everything I knew how to do, and he still made choices that almost destroyed him and put us in a great deal of pain. You can do the right things, and they can still choose the wrong things. But doggone it, we have better odds when we choose to do the right things. I know the farms worse, and I know what kind of parents they were, and I know what lengths they went to try to have conversations. I know all those things, and she was in too much pain. And she made a choice, an impetuous choice without thought. And that's going to happen, unfortunately. But doggone it, we have got to wake up and start playing our parts to the best of our ability.
Hey, Jim.
And then for those who, somebody did make a decision they can't take back, we'll be there to help them walk through it, to get them to the other side.
Hey, Jim, I just wanted to add to that. Just talking about that is, she believed a lie.
Yep.
Period.
Yep.
And we get to live with the repercussions of that the rest of our lives, and the ripple effect that has went through this community because of it.
Yeah, and you know what? We all can tend to believe a lie, can't we? Which is why knowing God, walking in the light is so important. Loving on each other, reminding each other when those voices in our head are saying things that aren't true. I can't tell you how many times I believed things. They sounded so good in my ears until I said it out loud, and I realized how stupid that sounded. Or I had people that told me it was stupid, but loved me enough to listen anyway. Doggone it, we have got to wake up and pay attention. We're starting a journey. We need all the help we can get. We want to raise up kids that are not only strong enough to withstand the lies, but willing and able and ready to help straighten out, help others know the truth and share the truth. We want to be in partnership in our community. We want to minister to parents. And I want to just say to all of you tonight, thank you for making time. All of you in your own ways are fighting for our kids and our families. And I want to thank you for that. Let's give them a hand tonight. Again, I know that some of you are hurting right now and you need to talk. And we want you to. That's the key to healing. Bringing things into the light. And having relationships to help you carry that burden and get to the other side. Let me just pray, and we're going to close tonight. And again, this is the beginning of a conversation. We have a long ways to go, but this is where we're starting this in January with our kids. And we need your prayer, and we'd love to hear those of you who would like to help us in this ministry in one way or another as we form teams. And again, I'm thankful to Kairos and for all they've done, and to the Lakeland School District. Let's just pray. God, the world has gone nuts on us, and we're grateful that you offer us a hand. You offered us yourself. You came, Jesus, to the world and brought light, and many will reject it, but you brought it. You're a God of grace and truth, and you're a pursuer, and we're grateful. Lord, you see the problems we're having down here, and you know we're not capable of doing this by ourselves. You know all the factors. Even now, you know kids and adults who are considering this or battling these thoughts, and Lord, help us to be aware of who those are. Help us to go slowly enough through life that we can notice those around us. Help us to have your heart for those around us so that we're willing to make them more important than a silly hobby or more money or a bigger house. Help us to care about you and people more than we do ourselves and stuff. Help us to be a light in this community. And I pray that that would cause a ripple effect in a positive way. For the family of the young girl last week who took her life, her own life, I pray for them. I can't imagine the pain. For the friends, those involved, I know the enemy whispers that somebody blew it, they ruined things, it's their fault. I know that the enemy is isolating and pursuing and lying, and I pray that you would bring light to the situation. Thank you for this night, for those who chose to come and be proactive. Show us what to do next. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you for being here tonight.